Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and this is Movie Crap. This is my weekly movie news show where I talk about movie news, trailers, and articles that I want to talk about. So, first up, the Primetime Emmys for animation, or as they're called, the Creative Arts Emmys, were handed out last Sunday. And although this isn't a movie story, I just wanted to talk about it anyway, because I always am interested in who wins the Emmys for animation. In the Individual Achievement in Animation category, which is not voted on by the body of the Emmys or whatever, it's done by jury. Samurai Jack actually won 4 awards, which is more than or tied with how many it had won previously at the Primetime Emmys. Various people who worked there, from a storyboard artist, production designer, character designer, and background designer, all won different Emmys. The only other Individual Achievement in Animation award that was given out was to Wander Over Yonder for character animation. It's pretty much the only good things that come out of the Emmys, because Bob's Burgers won for animated program, Adventure Time won for short form animated program for Islands Part 4, and the character voiceover performance went to Seth MacFarlane, who I actually do think is a talented voice actor, but it's kind of like, we're doing this in 2017, we're giving him an Emmy for this. I just think it's a little weird, but it's really cool that Samurai Jack, for its final season, walked away with 4 Emmys, which is more than any other animated show won Emmy-wise this year. Sort of the biggest movie news of the entire week. It has been confirmed that J.J. Abrams is going to be directing Star Wars Ep.9. This really isn't someone that anyone thought would actually be directing Episode 9. He didn't seem to have very much interest in doing franchise stuff after Force Awakens. Seems like he wanted to do Force Awakens and then move on. He didn't really have any projects that were in that much of development. The only film that I actually heard of that he was trying to direct was a film that he was going to make with DiCaprio starring in it, which now Scorsese and DiCaprio are making. And that was a while ago even. Like, I heard about that maybe a year and a half ago. I don't know what had been going on with him, and maybe nothing was really taking. I mean, certainly people are going to let him make whatever he wants at this point, but I think he just didn't have a project coming up, so maybe he was available. It's both kind of odd, because it's like, it's a safe choice because he's clearly done a Star Wars movie before, but it's also kind of a weird and risky choice, because one of the reasons Abrams was not asked back to do Episode 8 and 9, or at least write and produce, was mainly because of Star Trek Into Darkness. So bringing him in for this one is a little nerve-wracking. However, I will also say that his directorial debut was Mission Impossible 3, which then rebooted that franchise, and look where that franchise is. I'm not as against it. I'm a little worried, because I feel like what J.J. Abrams does well is start off things like the first Star Trek, Force Awakens, Mission Impossible 3, and then he bounces, and then they turn out a lot better as they go on. I was never that excited for him as a choice for Force Awakens, but I thought it sort of worked for the first movie. And in this, it's like, I don't really understand why they got him, other than that Kathleen Kennedy wants experienced directors after the whole Phil Lord and Chris Miller thing, and then the Colin Trevorrow, whatever thing. Rian Johnson reportedly turned it down. He basically said, like, it's not in the cards right now for him. He's still finishing Episode 8, which to most things I've read is actually done. Sounds like he was offered first, and then they went to other people, even though Abrams did have problems with Kathleen Kennedy on set, and it actually didn't work out for the most part. He's probably the kind of crazy that she's used to. She knows how to deal with him, or at least what she's in for with him, and she knows that he's more of a traditional director in terms of what she's looking for. It's a little weird because he is part of the group of younger filmmakers, but I think in this case she's kind of considering him part of the older guard and so forth. It's kind of one of those decisions where, like, I'm curious where he's going, but I think this is probably one of his greatest challenges, because it's kind of him showing that he's more than the idea guy who just starts things off and then has someone else finish them, or they don't turn out well when they are finished. Examples being the end of Lost and what happened with Star Trek Into Darkness. I didn't really mind the kind of references, and it's like poetry, it rhymes-ness of The Force Awakens as much as other people did. I know some people that really annoys them, but it didn't really bother me. So we'll see what happens with that going forward. It's also interesting that Chris Terrio, who won an Oscar for writing Argo, will be writing Episode 9 with J.J. Abrams. It seems that Lawrence Kasdan, who helped him write The Force Awakens, is no longer going to be working on Star Wars films, which is something that Lawrence Kasdan pretty much said a while ago. So it's not that surprising. Chris Terrio, although he did win an Oscar for Argo, and that was a fine movie, I guess, has more recently just been rewriting DC movies, which kind of brings me a lot of pause for that. Maybe J.J. Abrams knows something that we all don't, but I sort of wish he had a better screenwriter in his camp. So the trailer for the movie The Disaster Artist came out. That is the film that is directed by James Franco, also starring James Franco and written by James Franco, and Seth Rogen's involved. I think he produced it. It's basically the story of how they made the infamous bad movie The Room. I think this looks like a lot of fun, first off. But I had an interesting kind of Twitter discussion with Rachel Wagner, a fellow YouTuber and movie critic who you should definitely check out her channel. We both kind of agreed that it's sort of the similar take that Ed Wood had, where it's like they really want to make this movie, they really believe in this bad movie and things like that. And it certainly doesn't look as good as Ed Wood. I don't know if there's like a self-aware way, or they just figured this was the only way to really tackle a bad movie like this. Like if you're making a movie about the making of it, I just thought that was a little boring. But I'm still into it, and I'd be into, you know, seeing it, like if they made a movie about like Manos, the Hands of Fate, that way I'd be for it. But it just feels a little like not as original, but I'm still probably going to see The Disaster Artist the first weekend. I'm just a little hesitant based on the approach that they're taking. Episode 9 was actually pushed back to December 20th, 2019, just when you thought there wasn't going to be any more Star Wars movies released around Christmas. It seems like it's still going to happen. That slot that they used to have, which was going to be May 24th, is now going to have Guy Ritchie's live-action adaptation of Aladdin, which is a real movie. And the main thing that this does in terms of actual other movies that is a little interesting is the fact that Frozen 2 comes out that Thanksgiving. 2019 didn't have a lot going on. I think everyone thought the Avatar movies were going to be released then. They weren't. Hollywood still doesn't want to count out James Cameron, so they're going to consider this release date a big thing. With Frozen 2 and Episode 9, Disney's pretty much got the holiday season of 2019 on lockdown. Like, nobody's gonna fuck with these guys. Between Frozen 2 and a Star Wars movie, they're just gonna own the multiplex. The movie that was supposed to come out the weekend before December 20th is Wonder Woman 2, which was a big vote of confidence actually in Patty Jenkins, and probably one of the ways they got her to sign. She actually, by the way, Patty Jenkins signed on to direct Wonder Woman 2 this week, and apparently getting the highest upfront deal for a female director of all time, somewhere between 8 and 10 million, no one's exactly sure. Director pays are a little different, so talking about that is like Steven Spielberg, who certainly could for all time make $20 million, doesn't do that. He puts it into the budget and gets it off the back end, and a lot of directors do that and do different kind of deals. It's not as cut and dry as most movie stars do, but I still think Patty Jenkins deserves that amount of money, and they should have a lot of faith in her, and she's lucky that she's at Warner Brothers because they pay very well. They did have a lot of confidence in her, and Wonder Woman 2 is that they were going to let her take pretty much the Christmas slot and just like, you know, a Wonder Woman movie. Christmas movies end up doing better because you're playing throughout January and so forth. So the fact that that's kind of taken away from Wonder Woman 2, I'm curious where that's going to go. There's all the release dates for DC movies that are between Aquaman, which is in like 2018 or something, and Wonder Woman are pretty much just like slots, so it could go up in the summer, it could be delayed till 2020. And I think Patty Jenkins signing so close to the Episode 9 news pretty much means there was a bit of a delay and a bit of a need for Warner Brothers to like actually sign her to a certain point, actually make sure she's doing the Wonder Woman 2 movie, which semi makes me think she was actually seriously considered, despite all the shit people have talked about Kathleen Kennedy, particularly with this Star Wars film, if she was or not. But it's similar to what happened with Denis Villeneuve and how he signed on to the Dune movie right when the Batman director search was going on. Basically, Star Wars Episode 9 has caused all sorts of chaos in Hollywood, but it seems like Episode 9 as a director, Wonder Woman 2 as a director, I expect Wonder Woman 2 to get delayed, and more moving around and shakeups of the 2019 release slate, because they're all probably going to duck and cover from the nuclear bomb that Disney's about to drop on the box office in December of 2019. There is a trailer for the My Little Pony movie, which while watching it, I realized, and despite, you know, knowing people who are very much into this show, from Paleo and Saber, and going to BronyCon one year, I've never seen the show. I'm not trying to be too cool for school. Everyone knows that I have not seen the show ever. Watching this trailer was like, oh, so this is like what it is, I guess? I don't know. I might actually see this movie. I haven't decided yet. It's kind of Blade Runner weekend for me personally, but maybe I'll get around to it after. You know, as a new trailer, Emily Blunt doesn't really sound like Emily Blunt, and she's in it, and I don't really understand who the other ponies are. I keep saying there's one called Apple Clumps. I'm pretty sure that's a My Little Pony or something. There was a first look at the new Hellboy movie with that guy from Stranger Things as Hellboy. You're looking at it right now. Sort of looks like the old Hellboy, but darker, because the lighting's bad. That's cool. I don't really get this new Hellboy. I know it's going to be cheaper, more of a genre, affordable thing, but I still am kind of like, okay guys, I guess so. You're kind of competing against Del Toro, so I guess this is sort of the B-movie version of Hellboy, but if there's any character that could kind of work in a B-movie genre kind of flick, I guess it is Hellboy, so maybe this will work, but that's at least what he looks like so far. Pretty much the same, but with a different face. So that's last week or maybe 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. Ed Skrein actually quit Hellboy because of the whitewashing scandal over the role that he was cast in, and he didn't feel that he should have been cast in that role, so he quit so an Asian actor could take that role. And an Asian actor has. Daniel Day Kim has taken the role in Hellboy, so it's kind of cool that that actually did happen. So that's nice to hear. It's interesting to see where this Hellboy movie is shaping up so far. I'm not exactly sure what the vibe's going to be other than kind of like a cheaper Resident Evil type action movie, but maybe it'll be a fun, cool Resident Evil action movie. I definitely sort of am half like the Hellboy character design's lame, but I sort of like what they did with casting Daniel Day Kim and how they handled that controversy. There's a trailer for Coco, which shows off way more of the plot and gives you an idea of what the story will be. This is kind of not a traditional thing that most studios do, particularly Pixar, this early in the game, frankly, but it's probably to counteract the negative buzz for Coco and the not understanding of most audiences of what it actually is, which does hurt your box office. All this stuff about Day of the Dead and everything, your average movie fan might not actually know any of that, but they will be like, well, I don't really know what Coco is. Is this like one of those good dinosaurs? I ain't seeing that. It's a smart move. It definitely cleared it up. It's the first time I watched a trailer for Coco and I went, I actually want to see Coco after this. It was a good trailer. It's a good way to reverse kind of the narrative that's been going on with Coco. It's a good trailer. I think it's their first really good trailer that made me go, okay, I want to see this now, and doesn't really play off of the Book of Life thing. It feels like its own thing, a very clear message of what it's doing. Probably should have done this earlier, but it definitely gets me more interested in Pixar's Coco. The Venice Film Festival was going on. Guillermo del Toro's film The Shape of Water won the Golden Lion, which is a big deal. The Shape of Water is becoming a big Oscar contender. Another article on IndieWire how The Shape of Water and Darren Aronofsky's Mother are becoming harder sells for Oscar voters because they don't like creature movies and they don't like horror films, but that these films are becoming the more toted films. What will that do for the Oscar race? And also, Get Out as well is going to be one of those. So it's going to be an interesting, this is a very interesting horror year, but Shape of Water is really starting to build a lot of steam. So I'm curious, that comes out in December, I believe early December. I'm very curious about this movie. I haven't seen a Del Toro movie hailed this much since Pan's Labyrinth, so I don't think it's the same kind of movie. I'm excited to see a really good Del Toro movie again. So if you saw it this past weekend, you know that everyone's really talking about what's going to happen with the sequel and who's going to be cast in the sequel. I linked a particular article. Every movie site did an article about what's going on with the It sequel because obviously there is one. No one really knows who's going to be cast. It is going to become the big movie story, basically, who's going to be cast in the sequel. There's always been rumors that Jessica Chastain is going to do it as Bev and even shot a scene as Bev that they decided not to put in. I don't think that's actually true. I actually think Amy Adams would be a better choice. I know because, she was in a film, Mama, that Andy Muschietti also directed. I get that. There's some interesting casting ideas I've heard, particularly having the chubbier kid played by Jerry O'Connell, which definitely harkens back to Stand By Me, which I actually think is a good bit of meta casting, and various people like the one hypochondriac kid being played by Fred Savage. I'm curious where it's going to go. I'm curious who's going to play Bev, and I'm curious how it's going to go. It's be interesting. I think they can probably get bigger stars, particularly with the box office that it had over this weekend. Now on that note, let's talk about box office. It made an astonishingly large amount of money this weekend for a film that only cost about $35 million apparently. It made $123 million, which is a September record. The previous record, which was Hotels Transylvania 2, made about 48, which it more than doubled. Some would say tripled, but those people I don't think know math, but I'm not gonna actually divide that out. 123 million is crazy. That's summer kind of numbers. One of the biggest horror openings of all time, one of the biggest R-rated openings of all time. The disparity between it and the movie at number 2, Home Again, is the largest disparity between a movie at number 1 and a movie at number 2. Those are kind of the two big releases. Of course, they're going to open at 1 and 2 because the box office is starved for something interesting to happen. And it has actually been pulling in and pulled in another 20 million by the time I'm shooting this on Monday and Tuesday. I went to a Monday night showing of it and it was packed, and I don't usually see that many people on a Monday night seeing a movie. So this movie has a lot of buzz. I expect it to be number 1 again this weekend. It seemed like the whole film industry was pushing for it, because when I saw it, there would seem to be so many, more trailers than usual. There's Ready Player One. There's even an ad for Mother where they're come to this theater next weekend and see Mother. The trailer for Downsizing, which is the Alexander Payne film where people are shrunk down because of space and overpopulation, it stars Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig. I'm very interested in it. I'm interested because Alexander Payne usually doesn't work with big budgets like this, and usually not with movie stars, despite studios usually wanting him to. So I think Matt Damon's kind of a good everyman for Alexander Payne, so I'm really curious about this film. I think it'll be a big Oscar movie, or it could just be one of those weird auteur expensive movies that doesn't really catch. I kind of feel like it's one or the other. We'll see, but it'll be coming out this fall. And there's a cool poster for Mondo, which you can see right here, for the 35th anniversary of E.T. I think it's a neat little poster. I don't know, it looks pretty neat to me, if you like E.T. 2 bits of Jim Carrey news, and not the one about him doing the thing for the E! Interview, which was really great, and I did retweet. There's going to be a Jim Carrey, Andy Kaufman documentary about him filming the film Man on the Moon, and the lengths he went and the intensity put forward to be Andy Kaufman in that film, which most people don't remember, but whatever. That documentary is going to be on Netflix, which acquired it. I think that's a good place because most people I know who've seen Man on the Moon lately have seen it through Netflix. Man on the Moon was a big movie for me when it came out. I learned about Andy Kaufman because of the hype of that movie, so I'm actually really curious to see this documentary and maybe see Man on the Moon again as well. And during talks for that film, Jim Carrey regrets actually turning down having Spike Lee direct one of his movies, and that movie was actually Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. Yes, I'm serious. Spike Jonze actually did try to audition to direct Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, which sounds like a crazy, crazy thing that I sort of wish happened, but didn't. So there's a cool series that Birth Movies Death has called Bond After Dark. It's a kind of weekly editorial by Phil Nobile Jr., who's a big James Bond fan, and has various screen tests for people who screen tested for Bond back in the day, including Sam Neill and, believe it or not, James Brolin, when they actually considered, he was the only one I think they considered a American Bond, and even has a nice interesting quote from Pierce Brosnan when he was making Tomorrow Never Dies, and how he felt the kind of future of James Bond would be, which is kind of interesting considering what the future of James Bond for Pierce Brosnan actually was. So that's a cool read, and you should check that out. I'm going to have a little surprise at the end. I will explain it at the end, but I'll just do my usual outro. But it is a thing that connects to the film Mother, which I will hopefully have a review of after this video. So, that was Movie Crap. I had the following reviews since the last Movie Crap: one for The Bellboy, for my Buster Keaton series, a review of It, and a review of Despicable Me 3, just because I couldn't let Illumination go. If you would like to comment on any of the movie news that I talked about, articles or trailers or whatever, comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. Alright, now that everyone's gone. So basically on Twitter, Darren Aronofsky posted a picture of a phone number. So I kept seeing him post it and I go, I'm just going to call it, see what happens. And I actually recorded what that voice message sounded like. It gave me instructions to go to this thing, so you go to the premiere. I can't go to the premiere because, I have a baby and such, and I couldn't go look for the man with the one horn because that was during baby bath time and bedtime and so forth. But I figured I would at least, for posterity, share with you the voice message, even if I didn't get to go and you guys didn't get to go. At least we can hear this cool bit of Mother promotional material, which I recorded up and am now going to have for your viewing pleasure. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.